We laughed through late-night studies and cried during failures. But then he used my trust to destroy my reputation forever. It's funny how the people who end up hurting you the most are the ones you'd once swear your life by. I met Ethan Mercer on the first day of college, both of us standing beneath Columbia University's massive stone archway, pretending we weren't terrified. I was trying to find my way to the student center, drowning in a sea of strangers in the lobby, when he leaned in and said, "First day of the rest of our lives, huh? Or at least the most expensive mistake we'll ever make." I laughed, awkwardly, unsure if it was a joke or just the truth. That one sentence started a friendship that, for a time, made the chaos of New York City feel like home. Ethan was magnetic. He had this easy confidence that drew people in, the kind of guy who could walk into a room full of strangers and walk out with 10 new friends. I was his complete opposite, reserved, methodical, trying to stay invisible while figuring out how to survive the Ivy League grind. But somehow, we clicked. Maybe it was our shared backgrounds. We were both first-generation college students from working-class families, both wide-eyed and quietly panicking under the weight of expectations. Or maybe it was just that, when the world felt too overwhelming, he made it feel manageable. We were placed in rooms 2 doors apart in John Jay Hall. By the end of the first week, we were practically living in each other's dorms. We studied together, ate instant noodles together, watched dumb YouTube videos until sunrise together. I remember us sitting cross-legged on his floor during midterms, surrounded by open textbooks and half-drunk cans of Red Bull, laughing like we weren't about to fail statistics. He made everything lighter, easier, warmer. When I was too anxious to ask a question in class, he'd do it for me. When I flunked my first lab quiz, he stayed up all night helping me prepare for the retake. "We'll get through this," he always said. "We're a team." He let me into his world, and I opened up mine in return. I told him about my father, a mechanic who worked 15-hour shifts so I could have a shot at something better. I confessed how terrified I was of failing, not just exams, but everyone who believed in me. Ethan didn't mock me for it. He shared his own burdens too. A broken home, a mother who raised him alone, and a chip on his shoulder the size of Brooklyn. Beneath the jokes and sarcasm, there was someone deeply wounded. And I wanted to be there for him. Our friendship matured with time. We got an apartment together sophomore year, a cramped 2-bedroom walk-up in Harlem with creaky floors and a fire escape that doubled as our weekend retreat. We spent countless nights sitting out there with headphones in, watching the traffic buzz below while dreaming about the future. We planned startups, plotted escape routes from capitalism, made lists of cities we'd move to after graduation. "No matter what," he said once, "we'll make it. Together." I believed him. I believed in us. Ethan became family. He came home with me on holidays, and my mother treated him like her second son. He washed dishes with my little brother, fixed the Wi-Fi when my dad couldn't, and made my grandma laugh like no one else could. My parents would always say, "It's rare to find someone like him in a place like that." And they were right, it was rare. Rare and dangerous. When he fell apart, I held him. After he failed his econ final, he went missing for a day. I found him in Riverside Park, drunk, eyes red, rambling about being a disappointment. I sat beside him for hours in the cold. Didn't say much. Just stayed. He cried into my shoulder. Thanked me for not giving up on him. Told me he'd never forget it. I wish he had. I wish he'd forgotten everything, my loyalty, my dreams, my secrets. But he remembered. And later, he used it all against me. Still, at the time, there were no red flags. Or at least, none that I could see. If he was ever jealous, he never showed it. When I got accepted into a prestigious summer research program at MIT, he hugged me first, hard, and said, "That's my boy." He even helped me prep for the interviews. But there were small things, moments I dismissed as quirks. He started being a little too interested in the professors I worked under. Sometimes he'd repeat things I only told him in confidence to others, twisting the context just enough to make me question if I even remembered saying them. I ignored those signs. I chose to ignore them. Because when you love someone like a brother, your heart edits out the ugly parts. During junior year, our paths began to diverge. I leaned more into academics, writing papers, working in labs, building my resume. Ethan started investing his energy into student politics, joining every possible committee and climbing the social ladder like it was a sport. Still, we stayed close. Still talked every night. Still celebrated each other's wins. I trusted him with everything, my insecurities, my doubts, my failures. I even shared things I never said out loud to anyone else, like the time I broke down during finals and nearly withdrew, or how much pressure I felt when professors started expecting too much from me. I told him about my mentor, Dr. Winslow, a renowned researcher who had taken me under his wing and whose recommendation could change the course of my career. Ethan knew everything. He knew how much I needed that reputation I had worked for. He knew how fragile my confidence actually was beneath all the praise. And he knew, deeply, that without integrity, I was nothing in this world. What I didn't know then was that he wasn't storing my secrets to protect me. He was collecting weapons. It didn't happen all at once. That's the worst part. There was no loud argument, no screaming match, no clear moment where I could say, yes, this is where he turned against me. Instead, it was a slow erosion, like acid quietly eating away at the foundation of something you thought would last forever. The first crack came during the fall of junior year, just as internships and future plans were becoming serious conversations. I had been working closely with Dr. Winslow on a research project that was gaining attention across departments. It was technical, niche, but promising. He mentioned recommending me for a joint grant proposal that could land me not just academic credit, but published work, something huge for someone like me. Ethan seemed genuinely happy at first. He even helped me prep for my mid-semester presentation, staying up with me the night before to run slides and throw mock questions. "You're gonna kill it," he said, handing me coffee at 2 a.m. "You're the smartest guy I know." I smiled. I didn't know then that while he handed me that cup, he was already making moves behind my back. The next week, I noticed something odd. During a departmental meeting, another student mentioned that Ethan had been asking around about Dr. Winslow's lab. I brushed it off. Ethan was curious about everything, nothing new. But when I later asked him about it, just casually, he changed the subject, twice. Then came the email. It was subtle, buried in a long forwarded chain between Winslow, a faculty board, and a department chair. I wasn't meant to see it. One of the research assistants had accidentally CC'd me while sharing lab updates. In the thread, Dr. Winslow raised a concern about a conflict of interest involving a student allegedly submitting overlapping ideas to multiple departments, one of whom was me. Confused, I confronted Winslow directly. He was professional but cold. He said he had received a formal complaint that questioned the originality of my research proposal, a complaint that cited exact phrasing from my draft and claimed it resembled a paper another student had shared weeks earlier. A student named Ethan Mercer. I couldn't breathe. It had to be a mistake. I mean, Ethan helped me with that draft. He read it. How could he? I ran home that night and waited. Ethan came in like nothing was wrong. Same casual hoodie, same smirk. I asked him, quietly, directly, if he'd submitted anything similar to my proposal. His smile faltered for a moment. Just a flicker, and then he laughed. "Dude, what are you talking about? Are you seriously accusing me of stealing your idea?" I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. But there was a new sharpness in his voice, a defensive bite I had never heard before. He called me paranoid. Said I was cracking under pressure. Gaslighted me like a pro. The next week, things spiraled. My access to the lab was temporarily frozen. The grant was paused pending review. Whispers started, people talking behind my back in the department. Friends acting weird. Even a Ta I was close with started avoiding eye contact. I began to unravel. And Ethan? Ethan was suddenly everywhere. Speaking at student panels, shaking hands with professors, even cozying up to faculty I had introduced him to. He wasn't just moving up. He was replacing me. I still remember the day I walked into the faculty lounge, hoping to salvage things with Dr. Winslow, and found Ethan sitting across from him, smiling, sipping tea like they'd known each other for years. My mentor looked up, paused, then said, "Ah, Ethan was just telling me how passionate he is about continuing some of your research angles in a different direction." My research angles. I left without a word. Back home, I finally confronted him. No hesitation this time. I demanded answers. He didn't yell, didn't deny, just looked at me and said, flatly, "You act like you invented ambition." That line. That one line. It broke me in a way nothing else could have. He didn't see what he did as betrayal. To him, it was evolution. Survival. He had grown tired of being in my shadow, of being the guy who followed, not led. "You were always the golden boy," he said. "Always the professor's favorite. Always the one who deserved everything. But maybe I deserved something too." He said it like he was the victim. Like my trust, my friendship, was some kind of privilege he was now revoking. I stood there, stunned. I couldn't even cry. The tears were frozen somewhere between rage and disbelief. From that moment on, he made sure there was no escape. Emails began to accidentally leak. Private messages I had sent him over the years, taken out of context, painted to look like I disrespected classmates or crossed ethical lines. One professor pulled me aside and asked if I had really said the department was full of nepotism. I hadn't. Not like that. But I remembered ranting to Ethan once during finals, saying something like, "Sometimes it feels like this place only rewards the ones with connections." He had saved it, used it. He destroyed me piece by piece. Not with one blow, but with precision cuts. And the worst part? No one knew. No one saw what I saw. To everyone else, Ethan was still the bright, ambitious student who had pulled himself up with charm and work ethic. I was now the complicated one, the one whose name slowly started disappearing from club rosters and lab credits. By winter break, I had lost everything: my research role, my reputation, my sense of safety. And Ethan? He smiled at me across the dining hall one last time and said, "No hard feelings, right? It's just the real world, man." That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling for hours, my heart pounding, replaying every moment of friendship, every lie, every hug that now felt like a trick. Somewhere between 4 and 5 a.m., something inside me cracked. Not my heart, my mercy. The apartment felt haunted. Every creak in the floorboards, every cup in the sink, every piece of furniture reminded me of him, of us. The ghost of our friendship clung to the walls like cigarette smoke, thick, stubborn, impossible to ignore. But I didn't leave. I stayed. Because I wanted him to feel it too. I wanted him to feel the tension in the silence when we passed each other in the hallway. I wanted him to wonder what I was thinking when I stared too long. I wanted him to question whether the quiet meant surrender, or something else entirely. He didn't say much after winter break, just kept going about his life, smug, untouchable, coasting on the success he had carved out of my back. He stopped pretending to be my friend, but he didn't hide his satisfaction either. I saw it in the way he laughed louder when I walked into a room. I saw it in the way professors started turning toward him during meetings where I used to be the one speaking. I should have transferred. I thought about it every day. But something deeper than pride kept me there. Something darker. I wasn't done. I didn't want to run. I wanted to watch him fall. But revenge isn't born from rage. Not truly. It's born from stillness. From observation. From learning exactly how the knife was twisted so you can return it to the heart of the one who held it. So I watched. I started noticing patterns. Ethan was smart, yes, but reckless. He was rising too fast, too publicly. He had positioned himself as a student leader now, chairing panels, giving interviews, even launching a startup pitch tied to student mental health, of all things. Hypocrisy wrapped in charm. He was everywhere. But when you're everywhere, you leave traces. I created a new email account under a fake name. I joined online student forums anonymously, the same ones he loved to post in to boost his own projects. I started saving screenshots, every claim he made, Every exaggerated stat, every plagiarized idea he recycled from conversations we once had. I built a folder, encrypted and meticulous, with tags like manipulation, fabrication, and personal attacks. Meanwhile, I cleaned up my own name, quietly, carefully. I apologized to faculty who had pulled away, even if I didn't deserve to be blamed. I asked for feedback, resubmitted work, took lower-level positions in research labs just to re-earn trust. It was humiliating, but I swallowed it, because I knew something Ethan didn't. Humility is temporary, but reputation can be rebuilt. However, his had only one direction left to go. One night in early spring, I found something. It was small, a photo on his LinkedIn post from a conference he claimed to speak at. Only, he hadn't. The name badge was visible in the image, but he was listed as attendee, not speaker. That one lie led to another. Turns out, the startup he'd been bragging about hadn't raised funds like he claimed. In fact, it wasn't even properly registered. I dug deeper. The ethics committee that had paused my research had quietly closed the case, with no wrongdoing found. I hadn't known. No one had told me. But the stigma had remained like smoke after fire. Now I had proof that the blaze had been started on purpose. One night, I walked into our apartment after a long shift at the lab and found Ethan hosting a group of visiting students. He introduced himself as a research coordinator, a position I knew he didn't hold. One of them asked about his publications. He lied. Boldly, effortlessly. I said nothing. But that night, I made a new folder on my drive. I named it Judgment. That's when I began to plan, not for some emotional explosion, but for surgical, quiet destruction. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to expose him. Revenge is never about rage. Rage is messy. Rage is loud. But the most powerful revenge is measured. It watches, it calculates, and when the time is right, it strikes with silence so sharp the victim doesn't bleed. Until they look down. By the time senior year started, Ethan was a rising star. His face was on student council posters. He had landed a mentorship with a high-profile alumnus in Silicon Valley. He was even in talks with the dean about launching a student innovation incubator. Everyone adored him. But adoration is fragile when it's built on lies. I waited. And while I waited, I built the machine. I knew his weaknesses better than anyone, because I had once protected them. I knew his lies because I had once believed in them. The startup he claimed to launch had used another student's research, a girl from Yale, whose work Ethan had praised once after a hackathon. I found her. I contacted her anonymously, sent her side-by-side screenshots. She was stunned. Furious. She had filed no formal complaint, but I gave her all the documentation she needed to do so. That was move 1. Move 2? I crafted a detailed anonymous tip and sent it to the university's Academic Integrity Board, outlining the series of false claims Ethan had made publicly about speaking engagements, roles he didn't hold, and articles he had ghostwritten off others' notes. I included timestamps, screenshots, even metadata. It was all meticulous, clean, no emotion. I knew they wouldn't act immediately. Bureaucracy never does. So I played another card. Ethan had once mocked a freshman on a private group chat for her stutter, calling her a PR disaster with legs. He'd laughed about it, said she'd never get into the debate society. I had the screenshots. He'd never deleted them. I sent those to her. She broke down. She looked up to him. I encouraged her, gently, anonymously, to speak up. She did. Now the social circle that once praised him started to shift. People didn't turn on him overnight, but the pedestal cracked. One more push. He had applied for a prestigious fellowship that would take him abroad, full tuition, housing, and global recognition. One of the application essays required proof of published work. He submitted an independent policy review he claimed to have co-authored with a think tank. Except he hadn't, because I had helped him fabricate it. Months ago, in the early days of our friendship, we'd talked about making a fake white paper just to pad our portfolios for internships. It had been a dumb joke, except he had kept the document and actually submitted it years later. I still had the original file. I sent it to the fellowship committee, along with a statement. I was once involved in its draft creation. It was never reviewed, never published, and the names listed are not affiliated with any verified institution. That was the blow he didn't see coming. The news didn't break immediately. These things take time. Investigations are slow. But the silence that followed? Deafening. Ethan grew paranoid. He started checking over his shoulder, asking former friends odd questions, becoming more and more isolated. The charm dimmed. The mask cracked. One night, he barged into our apartment drunk and shaking. I had been reading. He slammed the door. "You're behind this," he hissed. I didn't respond. He laughed bitterly. "You think you're better than me now? You think all this is some poetic payback?" Still, I said nothing. And that's what made him snap. He punched the wall, not near me, not brave enough. But it was the act of a man unraveling. "They'll never believe you," he said. "Even if you say something now, I'm too far ahead." I looked up at him then. Calm. Quiet. And finally spoke. "You're not ahead. You just haven't hit the ground yet." A week later, he received a formal notice from the university. An inquiry had been opened. 2 days after that, his fellowship offer was rescinded. The think tank he claimed to work with issued a public clarification on Twitter, denying affiliation. Screenshots leaked. The girl from Yale posted an article titled, "Innovation or Theft? When Ambition Crosses the Line." Ethan tried damage control, but you can't fix a shattered mirror, not when the cracks are public. His mentor ghosted him. The student groups dropped him. Even the dean, who once smiled for photos with him, issued a generic statement about upholding ethical standards. And me? I walked into my senior thesis defense 2 weeks later. Same building, same department that had once doubted me. But now, the committee greeted me with respect. One professor even said, "Glad you stuck through it. We almost lost a good one." I nodded quietly. Because I hadn't just survived. I had rebuilt myself from ash. And Ethan? He wasn't expelled. That would have been too clean. Too easy. No, he stayed. Just stripped of titles. Shunned. Whispered about. And every time he walked past me, he saw it in my eyes. He hadn't just lost a friend. He had created a ghost. One that would always haunt him. It could have ended there. He fell. I stood. He burned. I healed. Balance restored. Justice delivered. But justice is a funny thing. Sometimes it gives answers. Sometimes it gives more questions. Because long after Ethan faded from campus halls, long after he started dressing quieter, speaking softer, and sitting in the back of rooms he once commanded, something still didn't sit right with me. Not the betrayal. I had made peace with that. It was how perfectly he had known where to cut. How precisely he had used my words, my memories, my insecurities, against me. It had always haunted me. But I had told myself he was just observant, manipulative. Until I found the notebook. I was cleaning our shared bookshelf after he finally moved out, left behind in shame and silence. Most of it was junk, old flyers, tangled earbuds, energy drink tabs. But at the very back, tucked between an empty journal and a cracked hard drive, was a black leather-bound notebook. I almost threw it away, until I saw my name written on the first page. Not just once. Dozens of times. It wasn't a diary. It was a study. Of me. My habits. My class schedule. The professors I was closest to. What I said when I was tired. What I feared during exams. Even personal details. Moments I barely remembered sharing. There were pages with direct quotes. "He really trusts Dr. Winslow. Could use that if needed. Gets flustered when questioned about originality. Keep that in back pocket. Called the department nepotistic during finals week." Screenshot stored. Each entry dated, labeled. Sorted like a research project. I sat there, numb. The world muted around me. This hadn't been just betrayal. It had been premeditated. And then came the final page. Folded neatly inside was a single printed email. I recognized the layout. It was from me, the night before my presentation with Dr. Winslow, when Ethan had stayed up helping me prep slides. But at the top of the email was a forward address. To himself. Timestamped before I had even presented. He hadn't just helped me. He had copied it all that same night and forwarded it to his personal server. Before I'd ever clicked Save Final Draft, I thought the betrayal began during junior year. But the trap had been set months before that. And then I noticed something else at the bottom corner of the notebook, written in pencil, almost like an afterthought. He won't fight back. He's too soft for war. I closed the notebook. My hands didn't shake. Because I realized something in that moment. He hadn't lost because I fought back. He lost because he never really knew me at all. He thought he was building a file on someone predictable, vulnerable. But all he ever saw was what I let him see. The real me? I had been waiting the whole time. And maybe that's the biggest twist of all. He didn't destroy me. He sharpened me. Now, I walk with quieter steps but clearer eyes. I trust slower, but when I do, it's unbreakable. And when I look in the mirror, I don't see the broken version of myself he tried to leave behind. I see the man he accidentally built in his obsession to tear me down. Because in trying to ruin me, he forged something far stronger than either of us expected. And as for that notebook, I mailed it to the university's ethics board. No return address. Let the record speak for itself. The past is over. But the scar? The scar tells a story louder than any headline. We laughed through late-night studies and cried during failures. But then he used my trust to destroy my reputation forever. And in doing so, he set me free.